Welcome to another episode of Better Fishing with Two Bald Biologists. Corey, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's cold.
It is cold.
It is wintertime. It is cold.
It is very cold outside. It's only been getting colder. So, but hopefully it'll start warming back up.
Maybe one day.
So we've gotten through the Christmas season.
Yep.
I drove in a parade. First time I ever did that.
Yeah, how'd that work out?
I was slow. It was very slow.
Didn't go fast?
No, we did not. No.
Terrible.
I didn't win because there was a bunch of cars in front of me that had me boxed out.
Yeah.
So
it's one of those things you can't get out of line and go around it because you're just tired of being in it. You got to just stick through it, right?
A parade is not a race.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But great holiday season. I hope you guys got out and fished a little bit over the holidays. Corey, did you fish any over the holidays?
That is always the goal. I'm not always successful at it, but yeah, I fished some.
I'm been chasing deer, but I'm hoping to start getting out and chasing some fish soon.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're still biting this time of year.
They should be. They should be. So we would like to announce our winners for the Fayetteville show.
Yeah,
we were good enough to get a bunch of free passes to the Fayetteville show, so I just want to acknowledge them so that y'all know that, like we said, if you send us pictures, that you would get a free pass, and so we want to acknowledge that we actually did that. And so real quick, I'll run through those names. We each winner got a pair of tickets for the Fayetteville show, and so we really appreciate you sending us pictures. Your comments, your support of the podcast, and this is just a small way of giving back to that.
And we appreciate the Expos giving us the tickets.
Absolutely.
We couldn't have done it without them giving us the tickets, so we really appreciate that as well.
Yep, absolutely. So let me run through those names real quick. Josh Sims, Matthew Monroe, Ned Malone, Jeff Edge, Daniel Tuggle, Ton Van Giel, David Tuggle.
I wonder if they're related.
No, Daniel Tuggle. Sorry, I printed that off twice. That's a repeat.
Does he win twice?
Will Smith.
Oh, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Maybe. Maybe. Jaddy Hulan, Warren Stewart, and Karen. His email address, I don't want to give his email address on the air, but his name, I think his first name is Karam, and then L.W. Bass.
I like that.
L.W.
Bass.
Very appropriate name for this podcast, for sure. So,
well, congratulations to them. I'm glad that they got to go to the Fayetteville Fishing Show. So that's great.
So those are our winners, and but yeah, so here we are. 5-10 minutes into the podcast, we haven't even told everybody why we're here.
Yeah, we had a lot of business to take care of. Right. It's okay.
And he's been patiently waiting over there. And I'm sure our listeners and watchers, which by the way, we are on YouTube now. We've got a great. We probably ought to talk about the guys over here that we've got here.
We got guys taking our pictures today.
We have got a lot of help with the video today.
Professionals, as they say.
Yeah. Let me just tell you.
So if the video is terrible, it's all their fault.
2 years ago, if you just said, Ben, we're going to get a film crew and we're going to record you talking to the world.
Oh, my God.
I, along with everyone else I know, would have been like, that's not true.
That's foolish.
So
that is a perfectly good waste of time and space.
And yet here we are. So this is unusual for me as it is for maybe everyone else.
Yeah.
So,
but we appreciate them being here today.
But no, it's gone well. The podcast has grown, and thanks to you guys. And so we're trying to give you additional ways to follow us. So you can follow us on YouTube. You can like and subscribe. You can share us. We would appreciate all of that, and vote often and regular, as they say. Yeah. So, but today
I don't understand what any of that means because I'm old, but I'll go with it.
There you go.
Yeah.
So today we have a Matt Bodenhamer, and we're trying to get somebody from all of our hatcheries to show up on the podcast eventually. Well, really, we're trying to get somebody from all of our aspects of the division to show up on the podcast eventually. And so we've got several hatcheries across the state, and Table Rock is just one of those. And so we got Matt Bodenhamer to come and talk about what he does on the hatchery. So say hello to everybody, Matt.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Definitely the first podcast. He has been mentioned earlier, something that's new to everybody. This is definitely something new to me. Glad to be here. Glad to be here, especially with a packet full of winners on the table, and sounds like one Christmas parade loser. So
maybe. So we've got, how many hatcheries do we have?
Well, if you look at it from the sake of like production hatcheries, we have 5.
Right.
We have 5. We do have the Marion facility, obviously located in McDowell County. But that one is kind of like a research, and it's the CAC.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you are potentially up to 1/5 of representing 1/5 of our hatchery operation.
Well, there's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
As far as me, I'm here to represent Table Rock Fish Hatchery today, but I will definitely say that I'm really just the vessel to really talk about how our hatchery operates, what we do, what we raise, and really to, kind of go in a little bit about our staff as well. We have just the coolest, most committed staff at Table Rock. Starting with me, I'm the assistant superintendent at Table Rock Fish Hatchery, and my superintendent is Jimmy Lohman. And it's really cool having the hatchery dynamic. It's really tight-knit. It's really small, especially being a place where, when it comes to being on site, you live with who you work with, which is a really interesting dynamic, something you don't see a lot. So
a lot of people don't know that. You guys are living on the hatchery.
Yeah, so we live now, and each hatchery is different, as I was told one time, and I've always kept that to me, is that every hatchery is a fingerprint. It's all different. Every single one of them is different. Everyone's unique, and that's why it's really neat to be on here to, kind of let everybody know what our experience is and their experience if they were to visit Table Rock. So at Table Rock, there's 2 on-site places that we have 2 residencies. That's Jimmy, that's up at the top, and then there's me that's right when you pull in. We are the 2 people that live on site there, and we're on call. You don't just get free housing. Like you never leave work. Now that seems like to some that would be scary, but when you love what you do, it doesn't really matter. You're always getting to be there and getting to spend time with the people that you enjoy working with, and getting to create a product that a lot of people enjoy.
Just imagine if you had to live with me.
I would like to file some paperwork immediately.
That's all I got to say. That's all I got to say. Just imagine if you had to live with me.
No, I
think no was the answer there. No.
It wasn't a strong
no. It was a strong no.
It was a no.
No, I mean, it's a family, and I've spent a little bit of time helping on the hatcheries here and there, and I mean, you're right. Each one's a little bit different, but there's this cultural family type situation and feel that you don't really get in the average working environment, for sure. I mean, it's kind of working on a hatchery is a way of life. It
really is. It really is, and it's really cool though. Again, it's like, that's why it's so important that you have this like inner work group that works well together, because again, if there is any sort of issue and you live and they're your neighbor, you can't ever escape it. So like the unit is so tight there that like we always get along. If there's something, Jimmy and I, we might disagree with something, but it doesn't matter. Like we are all in it for the same goal, and we consistently are always giving each other a lot of heck, having a good time with it, and having a lot of fun. So, to kind of explain a little bit more in depth to that, again, we have 2 on-site places that we live, Jimmy being our superintendent and I being the assistant. We also have Josh. Josh has been with us a few years now. His name's Joshua Sanders, And then we have Garrett Wood, and he's been here just a couple years. So what's really neat about our dynamic at Table Rock is that we all have these skills and abilities that are like really, really cool that make it just all come together and just make this fantastic work staff. Starting with Jimmy. Jimmy has been there for over 20 years, which is really crazy and cool because not only did he live there for that long, he's had a family there. As me being there for 10 years, I've got to watch his family grow up and have that dynamic. And again, just like that close knit tight unit there. But he is like a magician. Like when you get so many years in, when
That's
it
what
comes
they say
to
about me.
You're here.
Among other things.
But yeah, so the man is a man of his craft. I mean, he's so good at being able to just have all that experience under his belt, to be able to say, guys, I foresee this coming. I can look at the 10-day weather. We need to get this done. We need to get that done. We need these production numbers. This is how, I've seen it in the past, all this historical knowledge. And then you have like Joshua came from our Land and Water Access crew and came over. So he's like the guy that can help run equipment when something goes down. He's like incredibly good at building stuff. He's really, 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 really good at like when it comes to a problem, being able to say, okay, Jimmy, I see what you're talking about. Matt, how, what do you think on like finding the design, or what are the options that we have to make this work? Joshua's like, I can make this, you could build this type of thing, but I have trouble designing it. And then you have Garrett that's just a whiz at being able to design stuff. So he can just like design it. We can immediately start building it. And then, I interject and help with that. I help with this stuff. I do a lot of the tour group stuff at the hatchery, along with, being on call and all that stuff. And then you have Jimmy that's running the numbers, knowing exactly when things need to come together. And it makes just this awesome production site that is a lot of fun to be a part of.
So, yeah. I mean, you said design, and I think that's something our listeners would be interested in, because you don't just add fish to water, although fish do need water.
They do need water. That's what I hear anyway.
4 years of college.
It's a growing trend.
State.
It's going to catch on eventually,
right.
Ben.
Fish do need water.
Yeah.
So, but they, especially when you're talking about spawning fish in a captive environment, you have to be somewhat creative to get those fish to,
absolutely.
Give them what they need to spawn successfully.
Absolutely. And it really comes down to timing, and it really comes down to that there's no fish hatchery store. You can't just run down the road to the fish hatchery store. There's a couple of there's a couple of businesses out there that sell aquaculture equipment and things like that, but it all has to be fabricated. It all has to be custom. And to me, it makes it a lot of fun because you get to put your own heart into every design and everything. Even if it doesn't work, we are able to get it to like find a way to try it and then build upon what didn't work to make it work. And so it's a huge team effort all the time.
Yeah, that's the thing I would say about the hatcheries, having visited all of them and worked with a lot of you guys, is that you kind of all are a jack of all trades, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Everybody has their own little talents, and it kind of all works together. And when you're there, you're on a farm. Like, people don't realize, like, talking about living there, right?
Right.
You're taking care of live animals that need around-the-clock care 365 days a year. And that's a lot of responsibility. And then there's things that come that break that, like you said, there's not a store for.
Right.
So you have to figure that out. You have to figure out how to make that work. There's something new y'all are all the time trying different things and like experimenting. Mm-hmm. It's like a laboratory that's going on all the time. Like, I think we can make that better. We can make that widget better.
Right.
And it's constant. And that's what I appreciate about all of you, is that you never stop thinking about how to make it better or how to make the process better. so that you can grow more fish for the citizens of North Carolina. And I think that's the really cool thing about our hatcheries is that that's what you guys do on a daily basis.
Right. I mean, it is a lot of, again, for me and the rest of our staff, and really all the hatchery staff, like every hatchery, a lot of times we will actually help out other hatcheries. They'll help us out. I'll get in a little bit more into that in detail when it comes to like the species that we raise, but we're all in it for this common goal. And a lot of us too, you know, as I always aggravate people whenever I do a tour group or something, it's like, do you trust the chef that doesn't eat his own food? You know, the majority of us fish, and like we also want to see it get better. We want to see these things. You know, a lot of our species that if there's a decline or if there's an issue, that we can start raising these fish and either make it over that bump or try to find some way so the anglers still have these awesome opportunities, along with our management stockings too. You know, Sierra at the CAC, she is fantastic, and it's again just somebody that is this whole new level of complexities with the non-game stuff. But we dip our toes into that too with our lake sturgeon. But again, you know, we'll get to the species part of that.
So we got two things we got to flesh out here because our listeners don't know what the CAC is.
Okay.
So yet.
Yeah, they're coming.
Keep listening to the podcast. We'll get to Sierra eventually.
Yeah.
But that's our conservation aquaculture center. So that's where we grow a lot of the non-game species and mussels, fish and mussels at that one. And then the other thing you alluded to is you grow different species at Table Rock. So what are the species that you grow there?
So, you know, I'll kind of take a quick step back and say that, yes, obviously Table Rock being a Coolwater hatchery, we're the only Coolwater hatchery of the state fish hatcheries that we currently have. And so being a Coolwater hatchery, we're really temperature dependent. So as the year progresses is the difference in species that we grow. So right now we're into winter, obviously, and could be snowing back home. I'm not sure. But with that said, we have trout right now. We have approximately 300,000 right now sack fry. Probably by Thursday, they'll be moving into tanks. So we have those on site right now. It's cold water production. We can do that during the winter. Then we get into our spring months, and those fish have to leave and go to one of the cold water hatcheries, and we start getting into the cool water production, which our main one is walleye. Walleye is our biggest culture. A lot of people, when they come into our hatchery, they think that we are cold water because a lot of people have visited a lot of trout hatcheries, and it's a lot of raceways, a lot of like cold running water. We're pond production. And so we have this intensive culture, which is just a fancy fish term for saying it's indoor fish aquaculture. And so what we have there is the beginning of our walleye season, where we actually raise them out in there and we grow them out. We actually bring in natural brood from one of our reservoirs. We spawn them, we collect the eggs, we get them going, and then we put them into our ponds. Now, a lot of people ask about the pond culture because it's kind of confusing because, again, a lot of the people that come, they see a trout hatchery. So when they get there, I always tell people it's like a crock pot. We fill up the pond, we add our fertilizer, our ingredients, and once we get the water temp right, we have a zooplankton bloom in each pond. Then we add our meat, which is our walleye fry, and then it's like a 40-day process. And then we drain that crock pot and we get the meat back out and everything. And, you know, we end up seeing what our fish are at size, usually between 40 to 50 days. During that time, go ahead.
I need to stop you right there because we got to have a crock pot discussion.
We're talking about crock pots now. I thought we were talking about fish, but I like it. I like the analogy.
I think I have never heard it before.
I hadn't either,
but I think it's a really good analogy. And with your creative, maybe we could get an Instapot hatchery going on.
Instapot hatchery.
It's like a crock pot, but faster.
If you put fish eggs in an Instapot and turn it on steam or
that
whatever
won't
for
go well.
30 minutes, how's that going to turn out for you?
Not well.
They're going to hatch?
They're going to be triploid, but that's because they're dead.
So, no, I really do like your analogy of, you know, but I will say you're probably selling yourself a little bit short because I don't have to pay any attention to my crock pot when I put a deer roast in it. But you guys are feeding these fish. You're checking the water. You're checking the water chemistry. You're doing stuff every day to these fish.
Every day.
So I'm going to challenge your crock pot analogy just slightly, but it's to give you credit for the work you're doing.
It's a watched crock pot.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got to stir it on occasion.
Every 30 minutes. Yeah. No, not quite that often, but no, I do appreciate that. It is a ton of effort that goes into it, and definitely, I could get super into the weeds of that, but really it just comes down to a lot of checking, a lot of monitoring. The biggest thing is making sure the water's not draining out. So a lot of our facility,
once again, fish need water.
Fish need water, but those fish need something to eat. And when we have that exponential growth and the exponential food source in there, if we get a leak in one of those ponds, we immediately start losing that food source. And, again, with, ingenuity, and this actually came from an idea from Jeff Evans. He was talking to us. He's the superintendent at the Walleye Fish Hatchery. He was saying, hey, I tried feeding the walleye that we have, that we take to them. And we started doing it too, and it started working. It grew. It kept the growth a little bit better on them, or it kept the growth either what they had. It kept them a little. It kept either more in there. We were starting to see higher numbers and a little bit bigger in size.
So just to add a little clarification there, normally what the larval walleye are eating is the small organisms that are living in the water,
right.
Is like the zooplankton. And it doesn't matter if it's a hatchery pond or a farm pond in your backyard, the phytoplankton is there. The zooplankton eat the phytoplankton. Right. The little fish eat the zooplankton. The big fish eat the little fish. It's a food web thing.
Right.
So what you're saying by feeding them is you're adding pelletized or powdered food.
So they're powdered at that point. And, the funny thing is, I mentioned earlier, going back to the timing of it, Jeff started feeding his walleye ponds, and on a short excerpt, that was one of the things that really helped us. And again, just the whole conglomeration of everybody helping each other out. We actually take walleye fry to Watha in coolers, and they started raising some for us because they had some time. There's a little gap in time there that they could do it, and they've been helping produce more walleye for us as well. And it has been phenomenal on the walleye numbers for each year that they've been doing that. And now McKinney Lake, Rick Bradford, he and his team, they're working on it too, on some as well. But regardless, back to the main point here. Yeah, we started feeding these fish, and the timing of it made a difference. Now, the science behind, are they eating that feed? We think they might be. It's a very small powderized feed. It's really, really tiny that we blow out of a blower to them. But even if they're not, it's adding more fertilizer to the pond at a slow enough rate to where we're keeping and actually having more nutritious zooplankton. So our thoughts are, would it be really cool to figure out why it's making that difference? Are they really feeding it? But at the same time, it's making a difference, so we're going to roll with it. If it makes a difference, it's a good thing.
So, and we get a lot of walleye questions to the podcast. So if you are one of our walleye aficionados,
this is where they come from.
This is where it all started.
The bulk of them come from Table Rock.
And while I will say the bulk of them come from us, because they have originally do come from our facility, as we spawn them and we fertilize those eggs and we get those eggs hatched out. But I definitely want it to be understood that it's a huge team state fish hatchery effort, because what those guys do at Watha and McKinney Lake have helped us a lot. And not only by numbers, but on a quick example, you see the weather right now. It was 80 4 days ago, or like really warm, and now it's like cold and rainy. Well, we still have that volatile weather pattern in the mountains or out at the foothills. So what we were able to do is, when we started taking these fish to Watha, started focusing on Watha, then focusing on McKinney Lake, it pushed our season further into the spring, so that after we got Watha taken care of, McKinney Lake taken care of on having fry at their facilities in ponds, we could now go on us, and now we have more stable temperatures. So being able to push that stable temp further into us really helped out our production numbers just through the sake of weather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is there anything else y'all grow at Table Rock?
There is. So, we during that time of the spawning of walleye, we also have muskellunge, or musky for short. Musky are a really cool one.
I don't care about that fish, Ben. I'll just be honest with you.
Well,
I mean, we've done a podcast.
We
on
did
that,
a
if you remember
podcast
that.
on musky, and we did not catch one.
I'm not a fan. Not a fan. Not only did we not catch one, we didn't see one. We saw a white squirrel, which ruined the day. It was a thing. Go back and listen. Sorry, I digress. You're raising muskies.
Unlike our chief, I would love to hear more about muskellunge.
Well, it's like a white squirrel on the riverbank in the mountains is like a banana in the boat at the coast. Is what
yes,
happens.
yes. We learned that.
Is that what we've learned today?
We have done both of
We've done
those.
both of
on this
those things on this podcast, and both of them ended poorly.
Yes.
Well,
yeah. Who knew a white squirrel? As soon as I said, "There's a white squirrel," and the guy in the boat was like, "Oh my God, it's over. The day
So
is
if you
over."
see a white squirrel, we were digressing, but that's okay. That's what we do.
what we
If
do.
you see a white squirrel eating a banana, you gotta make sure
you're really
the
having
day
problems.
is roached.
you need to call your life insurance salesman.
There's a
over.
solid week of no fishing in your future.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Back to
muskellunge. Back to muskies, Corey.
Back to muskies. Sorry.
I'll keep it short. Muskellunge are really, really interesting fish. They are really fun. I would encourage Corey to come watch us spawn them because they are.
I've seen you spawn them. I've been there.
You've been there to that?
I've been there.
You still don't like them.
He's just bitter because he had
better.
a couple tough days of fishing with no muskies.
Just saying.
I've been musky fishing one time and I hooked one. But
Well,
I
that's
didn't
better-
get it. I
that's
didn't
better
get it
than
to
me.
the boat, so
that's better
may not
than me.
be- may not be the
Significantly
muskie.
better than
Significantly
what we
better
did.
than me. I mean, all day on a
man.
boat going, well, this is nice. This bait's nice. And I'll throw it up against the bank and watch nothing hit it. That's great.
Well, it is
That's
known.
what the day was.
It is known as the fish of 10,000 casts for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
They have a really awesome following in the mountains. Sounds like it may be growing in the Piedmont. Regardless of the point, the musky are they're really unique because on an earlier podcast, I think with Pal Wheeler, he made that comment with our walleye that you're at the southern cusp of catching a northern fish in North Carolina. And musky is one of those. And that's what makes it super unique. And it pretty much what it allows is that, we get to do this really, really interesting, unique fish that a lot of other states in the Southeast don't get to do because it's out of their range at this point. And so what we've been doing is this has been going on, I say we as an agency, over 40 years. And it's went through a bunch of trial and errors, they tried to grow them out in ponds. They tried to grow them out in our old buildings. And really it came to today where we've really got it down to a science. Again, it took a lot of years of effort in trying to figure these things out, but we grow them during the same, just about right when the walleye are going into the ponds, we're starting with our musky production. And they do overlap there some too. And we bring those eggs in. The musky are different. They're actually in egg trays versus the jars, which the walleye are using. But once we start actually having those things hatch out, we keep them intensive for the entire period. So we have them from pretty much March all the way until October. If you were to ever come during that time of the year, you're going to see muskies at some stage. And we keep them and feed them throughout the whole year. And we can get them from an egg all the way up to about 10 to 12 inches where we can stock them at that point in October. It's a really, really cool fish, especially in the spawning process. You get to handle this giant fish, and I say giant, but we've had some in the past that are really, really big. And we actually want some that are not quite as big because they're just hard to handle. But with that said, we're still dealing with fish that are 3 foot on average.
Yeah.
So they're
it's
big
a big fish.
And so.
And I would say if you want to see how that process happens, it's on our website. You're on the video.
Yep.
You're the one doing all the talking. It's on the video at our website at ncwildlife.gov. Go to look up Table Rock and you'll find muskie video of them spawning out muskies. It's a pretty cool process.
While you're liking and
Feathers,
subscribing.
feathers are involved. Feathers are involved.
Feathers are involved.
Feathers are involved.
Yep. They, no matter how much science and new technology in the world, you cannot beat a turkey feather to stir eggs.
There you go.
You can't beat it. You can't beat them.
It is the tool for the job and for turkeys to fly.
And for turkeys to fly. Yep.
It's a dual task.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So after the muskie, we start getting into our warm water production. Now we're getting into the summer, and we have our CFP program. We have usually on average about 5 ponds a year that have our catchable size catfish in them. Now again, usually these catfish, and they still come from Watha, but now it's kind of reversed from like what we do with the walleye, Watha does for us. And so it used to be that they would grow them up to about 4 or 5 inches. We would come and get them and finish the grow out. But now we're actually, since they're helping us with walleye, we're like, hey, let us have the catfish fry. And now we're actually growing the catfish in those ponds as well, because we have the space and time to do it. And so the CFP community fishing program, we stock a bunch of catfish ponds during the summer, and pretty much until we run out. Usually it's a 6 month process through that. And then we get into our non-game fish, which is the lake sturgeon. This was first brought on with Luke Etchison. He was the one that kind of came to us talking to David Deaton, our production supervisor. Deaton looked it over, kind of sent the stuff. We were working with Warm Springs, Georgia, the Federal Fish Hatchery, and that's actually where we go and get them. And that's been going on since about 2016, and that was the year that I started. And it's a really, really cool prehistoric looking fish. I mean, it's something that some anglers are catching on accident now too in the French Broad watershed. But it's a really neat fish. It's, to me, like the closest thing to being able to say you can grow a dinosaur for a job that I've ever seen. So
yeah, I mean, the thing about lake sturgeon, once again, you're talking about a fish that we're on the edge of its range.
Yep.
You know, being in the southeast, it's right at the very end of where it would occur. Most of it occurs north and west of us, and you know, once was found in the French Broad River fairly regularly before Europeans came. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, Luke's been trying to restore that animal to the French Broad River, and that's where you come in. You come in, raise these animals and put these animals out. They're really cool to look at.
They are.
They're neat. When you go to Table Rock and see them, they're really neat
they are cool
to look at. So, and as you said, people are starting to see them more often. So something may be working. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch gears for a minute, but
That's
we asked Rick this question, and I think it would be interesting to ask it again, because you have a job where you basically, I mean, you stare at fish a lot, you know, so is there anything that...
I wish that was my job.
Of course,
Sorry,
there's
I
a
digress.
paper and computer screens.
Computer screens.
You see fish behave every day as part of your job, and you see what they're doing. So is there anything that you have seen fish do that you've applied to your fishing world because of your perspective?
Let's see here. You know, as far as I would say, like our muskie, I would say muskie's a good example of that.
He did watch muskie and then went and caught hooked one muskie
and hooked one muskie, and
better than us.
I don't believe it because I don't see pictures of it. So, I mean, you can say it all day long until you can prove it. Just saying.
I believe in you.
Well,
Okay,
I'm going to stare into the camera. Mm-hmm. You need to go fishing with Scott Loftus, because that's who I went with.
Lord, Scott's going to be like, don't do that.
I was with Scott. He saw one. I didn't.
No,
So,
well,
Once again, didn't see it.
Probably a lie.
he was really excited, so I think he saw it.
Oh yeah, he gets super animated.
He does get super pumped when he sees a muskie. Anyway,
so back to
what's really cool about muskie is that when we feed these things a pellet diet, right? And so what's crazy to see is how they are such an ambush predator. So that, and it kind of explains some of the intricacies of fishing for them, because we have this feed that grows in size as they grow. And as it slowly sinks through that water column, there can be 1,000 looking at it. And out of the 1,000, there may be 20 that go and eat it or try to get after it and eat it. And so what it made me realize is that these fish, they're not moving a lot. If you see these fish, or you see like the lake sturgeon, for example, or, a lot of our other species that anglers like to catch, they're moving all the time. Muskies sit. They don't move. They just sit there and
that explains it.
They eat and they go back under their rock and they just comatose out. And so they just...
That's it. They were all comatose.
They're all comatose. That's right. Yeah. They had all eaten something.
They'd all eaten something.
But no, it's just funny because we literally clean these tanks every single day because there's so much wasted feed that they just choose not to eat. Out of those thousands that look at it, that one goes for a pellet. Well, then in the next few seconds, another pellet drops or a couple drop, and they'll be out of all those 3% or 5% of them will grab those pellets at that time. So it's a constant. We literally have these clock belt feeders, which just about all of our hatcheries use, but they drop this food out and it starts dropping. And again, it's a slow sinking feed for that reason. So it's in the water column as long as possible. As soon as it hits the bottom, forget it.
They're done.
They're done. They are not going to look at it. They won't try to look at it. It has to be moving in front of them. So it's like they're very reactionary towards the movement. And so has that helped me as an angler for muskie? I hooked the one, and, it's still muskie fishing, but it taught me that their energy expenditure of looking and searching and wanting to be hungry is very low, at least for my perspective of being at the hatchery, because they like to eat and they like to hang out is what they
Whereas if you feed other fish at the hatchery, the food never goes to the bottom. It's just gone.
It's just gone, especially like our rainbow trout.
Yeah,
and the trout guys, they are
crush it.
just crushing that stuff. Yeah. But they're also swimming and burning energy all the time.
Yeah.
If you look, it almost looks, the way these muskies will suspend in our tanks almost looks as if they're in gelatin. Like they're just still and they're just not moving.
Yeah, they look like sticks floating in the water,
Absolutely.
like suspended in the water.
Yep.
They're just sticks, just sticking around. That's
Absolutely.
all they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Interesting.
Cool. That's why we didn't catch him.
That's why I asked that question, because I knew he would have some insights.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because you just watch fish. You can't help
right.
but learn something if you watch fish that much.
And it's funny that you say that, because that's part of why, again, as farmers with just this weird crop that can potentially eat each other, it's literally daily going out there and getting to see tangibly the work you're putting in.
It's bad news when your corn's eating other corn.
Those would be scary corn.
Yeah, it'd be scary corn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's bad news. That's cool.
So,
I like that.
I mean, we're kind of getting towards the end of this podcast. So I want to give you the chance to, if your listeners had one thing to know about what's going on at Table Rock Hatchery, what would you want to make sure that they knew?
As far as us, understand and know that our staff at Table Rock, and not just our staff, there's only 22 of us in the state, as far as hatchery personnel, and everybody is dedicated, and understand that we have to be, because we're living it. We literally live there. We are a part of it, and we want to see it succeed. Some quick things as far as Table Rock, things to understand. I know a lot of people, a lot of anglers will call us asking, why do you stock the walleye so small? Well, understand that there's strength in numbers, and that also the reason for that is these things are so voracious. They will eat each other. If we were to keep those fish from 50 days to 60 days, even 70 days, when we stock a acre pond with 100,000 walleye, our average goal is 40% return. If we go more than 50 days, you are looking at a guarantee of less than 10, probably 3 to 5. simply because they transition off of that and then they start eating each other. So like crazy.
You're saying if you went an extra 10 days, you go from maybe 40% to 10%?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, that's an average of 40%. Sometimes we do really great. If the weather's going, it's all farming. So, sometimes we get an 80% pond. It's awesome.
Yeah. But that's crazy, though, that in 10 days' time, because they basically become piscivorous, they start eating fish. In 10 days' time that you lose, if you had 40,000 in that pond, you could go all the way to 10,000 just because they're eating one another.
Yes.
I mean, that's true of all fish that are piscivorous. There's a point in time where you got to get them out, because if you don't, it's going to turn ugly, and you're going to lose it. You're going to lose everything you've worked for. Largemouth bass are that way. Smallmouth bass are that. I mean, there's so many fish that are like that. So I get it.
The fish that anglers like to catch are piscivorous, not a lot of times, and that is, again, it's a crop that will eat each other if you let it happen.
Yeah, we do get that request a lot for. I'm glad you brought it up, Matt. We get that request a lot for fish that need to be bigger. We need, a 5-inch fish, an 8-inch fish, heck, an adult fish. Can we stock adult fish? And the time and the effort and the loss that you get from that. Whereas as Ben and I have this conversation a lot about other species that we won't talk about today, so say you grow 100,000 of a 8-inch fish. What if you grow 5 million of a 2-inch fish? And you basically maybe have the same investment, but you have less time investment on the 2-inch fish,
Right.
The numbers game is where it's really at. It's all about numbers and having the large amount of young fish in the system to grow up and get big. So
there's also a lot of work out there that suggests that these larger hatchery reared fish
are dumb.
They don't have the street smarts, so to speak. They didn't grow up on the main streets.
Right.
They had really good parents that sheltered them their whole life.
They're literally sitting there going, "Hey, how you? Thanks for the food. Appreciate it."
And so when they get out of that hatchery, when
they see a dark cloud come over, they might be like, "Oh, I'm going to be fed again." Nope.
Just rain. That's just rain.
No, that's the one that's coming to eat you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, or a hawk or something.
Yeah, that's the
exactly
hawk coming to get you.
So yeah, there's different strategies for each species, and certain success criteria works better for others, and sometimes it makes more sense to get them out earlier, and other times it makes more sense to grow them out a little bit. So, and it's the pros and cons vary species to species.
Absolutely.
So Matt, we really appreciate you being here. Ben and I talked about having hatchery people on just so everybody gets kind of a flavor of the different hatcheries. One of the things I think you heard today from Matt, at least what I heard today from Matt, is that, you really enjoy your job. You're enthusiastic about it. There's a passion there that just is kind of deep within. And I think every hatchery person that I've ever met has that same exact feeling about your job. Would that be
for sure? I mean, there's definitely, again, each hatchery is different. Each hatchery deals with its own set of problems.
Sure.
But as far as that common goal, there is an hatchery employee that I know that ever wants to see it fail.
Sure.
And that you just don't. And again, we bleed our hearts and souls into this stuff, and again, we not only work it, but we live it.
Yeah.
And everybody that I've ever worked with, that's why I enjoy what I do. It's not just my personality, it's the people that I work with.
Yeah, and that comes through. Yeah, and so we'll have more hatcheries on. I don't know who will be the next hatchery that we have, but sometime later in the year, we'll have another hatchery come on and talk about what they do, because I find it very interesting. I think our listeners do too.
You can go back, you can listen to Rick.
Yep.
You can listen to David.
Yep.
We did one at Marion.
That's
so
right.
we did one with Rick, and now we've got Table Rock.
And we'll do some more.
So, and we got more coming.
And I would tell you, go to our website, go to ncwildlife.gov. We have videos on all of our hatcheries. You can learn about every single one of our hatcheries. They're there for you to watch. And as always, it's a YouTube video, so like it, and we'll appreciate it.
Right.
Is it time for questions?
It is. It is. And this one I think is fitting, because it was a question from Mr. Andrew about our mountain trout stocking program. the delayed harvest program in particular, and he wanted to know.
We're the wrong people for this, but go ahead. We'll see.
We're not the wrong people.
We're not?
We got this thing on our chest.
Oh, yeah, we're the right people. I'm sorry. We're the right people. I apologize.
I mean, granted, we aren't the mountain staff.
Yeah, we're the mountain trout staff.
But I'm pretty sure we can handle this one.
Okay, good.
So,
good.
I wouldn't have picked the question that was like.
That's true. I should have trusted you.
Great question.
I'm sorry.
We don't know.
I should have trusted you. This is
Although I have probably said that at some point. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff I don't know. But so what is the fate of the delayed harvest fish? You know, are they put out there to spawn, or why are we doing it? What's the strategy behind it? Was his question.
So those fish are not put out there to spawn. They're actually sterile. All of the trout that we stock are triploid, so they cannot reproduce, and that's done intentionally. The fate of those fish is that they do stay in our delayed harvest system until I believe it's the first weekend in June, the first Saturday in June.
Yep.
And then the first Saturday in June, harvest is then allowed, and you can go out and harvest your 7 fish out of the delayed harvest waters at that time. Most of our stock trout streams, and this is what I want people to understand, is that, you know, whether it's hatchery supported or a delayed harvest program, those streams are going to reach a temperature during the summertime that does not allow trout to be in them. So that basically they're going to get above 70 degrees Fahrenheit during the summertime. Trout don't like to do that. In fact, it is pretty lethal to them eventually. And so our goal is to have those fisheries during those cooler months, so the fall and the spring of the year, and sometimes even in the winter. And then, and then when we get to the summertime, those fish need to be harvested out, and so we allow our anglers to go harvest them at that time. So
he said he wasn't the right person to answer it, and then he just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. It was a soft toss. I appreciate that. That was a soft toss. It was very nice of him.
Did very well.
It's total opportunity.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
We put a lot into it.
Yep.
And it's a great resource for anglers. Go catch you some trout.
I mean, our whole the whole reason for our public mountain trout water stocking program, so the harvest the harvest portions of our trout program, so the delayed harvest and hatchery supported, it's all about the angler. It's all about the angler having that opportunity to go catch fish. If they want to take them home, they can take them home. Delayed harvest has those rules where you can't take them home until June. But then once that happens, we don't want them to go to waste either. We also want anglers to be able to go out there and take some fish home if that's what they want to do. And we enjoy doing it. And we have a bunch of hatcheries that are doing it for them. So,
And I'll just quickly interject there. The person that asked that question, what was his name? Whoever it was.
Andrew.
Okay. Well, Andrew, something else to consider is that if you are somebody that likes to catch trout and keep and eat trout, something to consider to up your ante when it comes to catching those fish is look for streams that are delayed harvest. See that there is hatchery supported below it, and wait for a rain event, because a lot of times you'll see some of those fish come downstream.
that's a pro tip.
And
that's what I just heard.
And there's your pro tip for today. So wait for those fish to go downstream into the hatchery supported. But understand and remember, do not park in the delayed harvest with fish on your stringer. Make sure that you are fishing strictly the hatchery supported.
First,
another pro tip.
First rule of trout fishing: obey all rules.
Obey all rules.
Yeah.
So,
and somebody on this podcast before has said that fish have tails and don't have homes. So even though they've been stocked there, doesn't mean they're not going to swim out of that reach. So there you go.
Wise man told me that.
Wise man once said that.
So the next question is, Mr. Adams has watched another podcast about gar fishing, and he wanted to know if we would ever do a podcast on long-nosed gar fishing.
Absolutely.
We sure would. In fact,
in.
One of our coastal biologists
is all about it.
He is a rough fishing son of a gun.
Yep.
TD Van Middlesworth. He's been on the podcast before.
He loves it.
He loves a gar, and we've talked with him about that. And so there may be a gar.
It is in our future, I do believe.
There's a gar bowfin, gar and bowfin, gar or bowfin. Whichever way it happens to happen, it will come.
Yep.
So,
yep.
So thanks for
Appreciate the idea for sure.
Okay. this feeds into what your pro tip of just a minute ago.
Okay.
This Mr. Savage has a question. You know, there was a lot of trout out there, and one of the lakes that he fished that had trout in it, unfortunately during Helene, as many lakes faded in Helene, the dam washed out, and so he was wondering, what is the fate of those fish that were in that lake? Where did they go? What did they do? Are they still there? That kind of thing. So conceptually, a lake blows out that has mountain trout in it. What happens to those trout?
So I would say that, and I don't know exactly what lake he's talking about, but I do know obviously Helene made an insurmountable amount of damage back home. However, it really depends on, one, the tributaries that go into that lake, and two, if those tributaries were stocked. Like Corey said earlier, remember, these stocked trout are triploid trout. So expecting them to, thrive into a new reservoir and, be able to reproduce, well, they don't reproduce already. So if it was something where it's a tributary feeding into a lake that's stocked, they'll eventually probably end up there again through either a rain event or just swimming on their own downstream. They'll end up back into that lake eventually.
I'd also say if the lake's gone, so that could be the case as well. We don't know from the question. If the lake's gone and they were in the lake, they obviously wash downriver. How far they wash downriver is dependent on flow, depending on how fast they adapted to the flow that was happening around them. I will say, I can tell you we were at Armstrong Fish Hatchery 2 days after the hurricane had happened, and the hatchery had been destroyed at that point, and there were trout everywhere. They were in the streams everywhere. Now, obviously a lot of them came out of our hatchery because the hatchery had been compromised, but they were fish in ditches, they were fish in pockets, they were fish in the creek itself, they were fish in deep pools. The trout did fine. One, they're a stream fish. They are adapted to live in high flow, high velocity water in higher elevations, and so they had the ability to do that. That doesn't mean that those fish that in the lake aren't 20 miles downstream. Mm-hmm. They might be 20 miles downstream, but they are somewhere downstream. And likely, if it warmed up, they're already gone. If they got washed into a place that it turned into 70-degree water, they didn't survive that. So, and another thing I'd say is that if the lake is gone and the stream is there and there's a naturally reproducing population of trout there, once again, I don't know. My guess is there's trout in that stream today. If you just go out there and look around.
The only thing, I think you guys are killing it. I'm going to just add one thing. We are about at 80% of operation for our hatcheries in the mountains.
Had to be less than that, but yeah.
Yeah, well, we're about to scale back to some other renovations.
Yeah.
But as these, in the next years, as we're restocking, all this recovery will start to build over time. Mm-hmm. And so you'll start to see fish where they were previously, even if in the first year or so you weren't able to find fish there, they're going to start showing back up again as we stock more and more across the mountains.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say about that is, some of the habitat that you were used to seeing has changed. Obviously, it's not the same. The creek that you once fished may not look exactly. I'm not lying. Yeah, it looks totally different now. But where one thing has changed, another thing might have changed in a different way that allows for trout to be in. So though habitats are shifting around, you're going to have to find those new places where that hold trout or hold the species that you love. Maybe it's smallmouth bass that holds smallmouth bass. Some places may be worse for those species that you love in the mountains. Some places that were never good are now great because the habitat's just changed. And so you're going to have to adjust. And, when it first happened, you're like, it's catastrophic, and it was catastrophic. I'm not belittling that, but the environment has a way of healing itself. And it actually heals fairly rapidly. Things that, there's no bushes, it's all rock and sand on the bank. Well, I guarantee you 2 years from now, there's going to be small trees growing on the bank of the river. It's just how it happens. It just restores itself over time. And so we just have to give it some time. Who's our winner, by the way, for this month?
our winner is going to be Mr. John Adams.
Sounds great.
Very presidential.
Very
name.
presidential.
Yes.
Yeah, very presidential. I wonder if he wears a wig. Anyway, sorry. Just digress. Well, Matt, we really appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah,
It's been awesome.
y'all.
Thanks for coming, and we couldn't ask for a better introduction to Table Rock Fish Hatchery, so thanks for doing that.
Well, cool. Well, tight lines, everybody.
Yeah, thank
for
y'all for
having
being here, and we'll see you next time.